You need to have that outside perspective. You need to talk to people about how do you perceive our brand out in the wild, so to speak, and how do you just what is it that they're seeing that you're not seeing? So the number one thing is the first step is always to have a discovery call with the founder or the CEO, whoever the VP, whoever's in charge of marketing.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Linda Melone. Linda Melone is the founder of The Copyworks, host of the High Conversion Health Marketer podcast, a seasoned copywriter, former personal trainer, and email strategist with over 15 years of experience in the health, wellness, and fitness industries. With a proven track record, including a $70,000 contract from a single email sequence and a 44% lift in homepage conversions, Linda's work speaks for itself. Prior to becoming a copywriter, she wrote content, articles, and blogs extensively for all the top print and online publications. She's been featured in MSN Health, Time, Shape, Self, Men's Fitness, and HuffPost, among many others. Today, she's laser focused on helping craft messaging for her clients that attracts their ideal customers. Congrats on being featured in all those distinguished publications, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much, Karl. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk with you about some of the ways that companies can improve their messaging, because I see so many companies make the same sort of mistakes. So what are some of the biggest mistakes companies make with their messaging these days?
I think the biggest mistake, and I kind of harp on this a lot just because it's so big, is not having a clear value proposition, not having something that differentiates you from your competitors that you can say succinctly, that's memorable, that's easy to remember, and it's really the foundation of all of your messaging. It's usually the first thing that I do with a new client is I go through and do an actual value proposition audit. And so that creates the foundation for all the messaging after that. And the thing is, if you don't have that nailed down, you don't know how to separate yourself from your competitors. And so then you're doing what? You're competing on price. I mean, that's never good. That I think is the number one thing, because even companies that think they have it, I'll go on their website and say, I don't even know what you do. And that's not something that everyone have somebody do or say.
Yeah, because especially these days with how short people's attention spans are and how impatient they are to get what they're looking for, if they can't tell immediately what they're going to be getting and what makes what you do different, that's a huge problem for me from a marketing standpoint. So what are some of the ways, like what's an example of a time where you've seen someone like work with a customer that had that sort of problem, and how did you help them fix it?
I had a client a while ago. It was a SaaS company, and it was a family-run business. It was a technology-based business, but it was family-run, which made them unusual. So when I first started working with them, their website was all very high-tech stock photos. A person looking at their phone was like on their homepage. And once I got to know them, and the CEO was very funny, really vibrant personality, and he has this family-run business, and he wasn't using any of that in his copy. And so once I got to know him and we did this audit, and I completely changed the way, like when you look at the website now, it's warm. And I worked with a designer. So this is the one where I got a 44% lift, but that included the designer. The copy itself, they were able to separate out, gave them an 11% lift in conversions, which is still really good.
Yeah,
but
wow.
The before and after is completely different. So now we have a person at the front desk. It's a hospitality company. And so they are greeting the people walking in. They're shaking hands, they're laughing, they're smiling, where it was very high tech before. And, and the copy is all about, we make our decisions I had originally said we don't make our decisions around a boardroom, we make it around the dinner table. CEO thought that was a little too familiar, so he says we make it, I forget how he put it, but he made it more like it's a family run sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it skyrocketed their conversions, just that one change.
Yeah, I can see how with it's a whole kind of idea of if everyone zigzag, if all the other companies in their industry that they're competing with are all focused on the tech, if they go with, oh, I'm going for families, and it's if it's going to resonate with their target audience more because they're working with other like smaller businesses that are probably family run or have entrepreneurship in their families, that's going to be much more appealing than another corporate faceless
Right.
tech company.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a whole different vibe.
And so you mentioned you do these audits for companies, and then where you find out all the issues with their messaging. What are some of the initial steps that you go through? So if someone is thinking, maybe I need an audit for their own business, maybe what could they look for that would help them go, oh my gosh, yes, I need more help with this?
Well, the first thing I think that's most important, and a lot of companies don't think they need this, is you need to get an outsider like me, because, and I'm not just saying it because that's what I do. When you are in a business itself and you're sitting around the boardroom and everyone's, there's a saying about, everyone's inhaling everybody else's fumes. I mean, it's like you're preaching to the choir. You need to have that outside perspective. You need to talk to people about how do you perceive our brand out in the wild, so to speak, and how do you just what is it that they're seeing that you're not seeing? So the number one thing is the first step is always to have a discovery call with the founder or the CEO, whoever, the VP, whoever's in charge of marketing. And the second step is I need to talk to some of your customers or clients, past or present. And that's the hardest part because everyone's busy and no one wants to take that time to do it, but it's the most important part, because then when I sit down and I talk to the people, it's when I get some of the best copy and the best messaging is from those conversations.
Yeah, I think and I totally agree. It helps having an outside consultant come in who doesn't have the same biases or the same familiarity with, or the same kind of need to necessarily or want to please the CEO. Because having someone to come from the outside and says, hey, you're paying me to tell you the truth and to be kind of brutally honest and give you what you need to solve this problem. And also having the time and focus to talk with their audience or their clients and really understand what's resonating with them is so important, because you can be guessing for so long and just or throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. If you just take the time to ask your best clients what they want or what resonated with them, and it can't. I say when I'm doing this stuff, it's not just a simple, well, why'd you buy this thing? Because people answer those surveys different than when they use a different part of their brain when they answer surveys and when they actually make a buying decision. So you can't just ask them why they did it after the fact. You got to dig a little deeper. But when you get down to the real reason why they bought something, then you know what you need to be talking about, because that's what is gonna resonate in your messaging, is something that actually speaks to the part of their brain that's making the buying decisions in a way that inspires them to make a buying decision. And you're not gonna be able to get that until you ask them the right questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when it comes to, I know there's a lot of companies that are using AI to make content now. What are some like the trends in the marketing messaging that you see that are like good ones for people to try and emulate, or like ones that they should avoid? Like, what are some of the trends you've seen with the marketing messaging these days?
Well, the most obvious one is what you just said, AI, and using AI for everything, thinking it's good enough. And the problem with that, aside from not being good enough, it's not good enough because all your competitors are using the same verbiage, they're using the same phrases, because AI pulls from the internet. So it pulls from what's already been said and written. So I think that's the biggest issue I see now. I've yet to go on a website recently where I couldn't spot the AI written content. it's just so obvious. And to me, it means it's lazy because you're not really using the messaging as differentiating you. Because if you were, you wouldn't be sounding like everybody else. So that's one of the negative trends I see. I think some of the other trends with messaging is keeping it very simple. And there's a lot more white space on website pages now. And there's a lot of design that's very simple. And I think that's a good thing. But the thing that's kind of probably the opposite of what people think is that the fewer words you have on a page, the more impact those words have to have. So if you think about Apple's pages, they'll have like sometimes a single word or 2 words. And who knows how long it took for their copywriters and marketers to come up with that, because there's so much that has to go into that. And the longer, like it takes me generally about 4 weeks to do a value proposition audit. So this means, I go into all the company's social media. What are people saying on them online? I go into sites like Reddit, which is very, it's anonymous. People can say whatever they want, and they'll say the good and the bad. Usually it's the bad. So what are people saying? And just the whole, I think in general, the good part is that people are starting to realize they need to make the copy attractive visually as well as, the words, but that you have to really make sure those words pack the punch you want them to. So, no, don't just use AI, because it's the absolute wrong thing to do. It's the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's a good tool for basically getting past that like blinking cursor on a white page, just getting something out there. But then, I like taking it further and tweaking stuff, or using it as like the inspiration, or just like, okay, that's what like the base level, let's build on it. But I think, the mistake that people make is, oh, it's generated, we can just put it out there and it's going to convert and it's going to move people the same way that like you mentioned the Apple's just carefully crafted 1 or 2 words on a screen is going to pull off. And that's just not how reality works.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest trend I'm seeing, that, there's a lot of positive. People are, in general, you can see it on LinkedIn, people are waking up that you need to be unique. You need to be able to talk about how you're different, and it takes it back to your value prop. So, yeah.
And so you mentioned it takes like a month for you to do the value prop audit. I'd love to dig in more into that, because it's something that I think a lot of people, like they start a business, or they go into like launch a campaign, and they don't know what makes a difference. So what are some of the best like value differentiators, or kind of value props? You mentioned this like a family owned IT thing. What are some of the other ones that you've helped people find where it was just like chef's kiss kind of beautiful differentiators that really worked out well?
One was, in fact, this is the one where I talk about the email sequence that landed this client $70,000 contract. It was a SaaS company, which usually is not humorous in their copy. But this CEO said, I want the emails to be, because this is from an email sequence. He said, I want them to be light. I want it to be, kind of humorous. And I remember when I came up with the copy, he literally laughed out loud at some of the things I came up with. And he said, let's do it. Like the technology, he said, the biggest thing he comes up against is that people are still in the 90s with their technology, and they don't realize they have this automated, service they could be using. And so one of the emails, the subject line, I put, the 90s called ... And you open up the email, it says, and they want their flip phone back and their leg warmers. And I listed other things that were like from the 90s. And he just thought that was great. So I don't know which particular email landed that contract, but he says, yeah, it really worked. So that was unusual. But here's the thing with him, is that he wasn't afraid to be different and to say, hey, we have kind of what some people may say is kind of a boring, bland product, which there is no such thing, by the way. It's just how you frame it. But he says, I want to do something different with this. I want it to be funny. And that's what I think really worked for him. So things like that, look at.
Yeah, I think there is that kind of that fear in a lot of leadership of, or especially like in when you're creating content, that people don't want to push the bounds too far. They don't want to be too different because they fear that if they try something risky and it doesn't work, they're going to like be fired or lose like their reputation or something like that, or have some sort of consequences for trying to do something different. And by not overcoming that fear, not pushing those boundaries, they end up settling for mediocrity and eventually failure because they're not evoking emotions. They're often like afraid of alienating some people, and they forget, despite how commonly this is said, that you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to appeal to your best customers. And if your copy is pushing away people you wouldn't want to work with anyway and attracts the people you want to work with, and that's what you wanted, so why be afraid of the pushing some people away? Because that's just a sign that you're doing the right thing. But for some reason that keeps getting kind of forgotten, or people are too afraid of actually being willing to upset anyone, and they end up not evoking any emotions and then get nothing from their marketing.
Right. It's like the difference between, like on LinkedIn, people talk about how many followers they have. I don't even push for that with my own profile, because if people come to me and I think they're a match, fine. And sometimes I will reach out to people I think are a match, but it's vanity metrics. You can have 10,000 followers on LinkedIn and no business, or on any other social media platform. What really counts is that you're talking to the people who really want to hear from you. Because if you think about it, and I've seen this in a number of different memes, like people say, oh, I only got like 100 people. And if you looked at a picture of 100 people standing next to each other in a room, that's a lot. And if they're all there and they're really interested in what you have to say, for a lot of people, that would even be enough. So, I wouldn't worry about that. But it is hard, because you see these metrics and you hear people on platforms like LinkedIn bragging about how many followers they have. And it can be kind of, I don't know if it's intimidating, but it's just demoralizing if you don't feel like you're where you should be, in quotes, right? Yeah. But it doesn't matter in the end if you're attracting the right people.
Yeah, I think it does help to have, like I said earlier, that outside perspective on what you're creating, and helping kind of get out of your own head, or get out of your own internal monologues that could often cause people to spiral and feel like they're not as successful, or not doing the right thing, or kind of they feel bad for not having the same vanity metrics when they've forgotten that their vanity metrics is not really what you want. I think a lot of businesses have made that same mistake too, with like kind of clicks and all like the dashboards, and they get really excited about the focused on those things, and they neglect the longer term relationships that they're trying to build with their customers or clients, and they realize that their people are leaving, or aren't returning their like renewing their subscriptions, because there's some better deal further, like at a different company, when if they had built more of the relationship, then there'd be a stickier like incentive for them to stay with the company they're at, instead of just being distracted by something shiny. And so I think overall people get infatuated with superficial, easy to like achieve, but not really that valuable metrics. And it's ends up influencing their decision-making when it comes to their marketing, that leads to the kind of situation we're now with a lot of companies struggling to attract and maintain client relationships, because they're not communicating what really matters.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if someone is thinking, oh my gosh, I totally want an email campaign that's going to land me a $70,000 deal, what are some of the, I know you mentioned before that you had some exciting coming up. Can you tell me about this thing you're going to be releasing soon?
Well, it's the same. It's based on the response that I had from that client. And I've written email sequences for other clients that have had great results too. So I thought, why not take the conversion copywriting principles and make a template out of it. And they say that, templates are, everyone loves to say templates are, everything is dead, LinkedIn is dead, templates are dead. If they really help, no, they're not, and it's like, I was going to say it's like AI, but not really, because these have been tested emails. So I have a sequence that, my niche is health and fitness. So I have 7 that are specific for the health and fitness and wellness industry. Then I have 7 that can be used by anyone. And so there's 14 altogether, and there's a video that goes along with it. And so it really is just to kind of get you started and get you thinking to where you would plug in and your client's information. And you can also contact me for, I don't know if I have this as part of the offer, but I will if I don't yet, because I did this. I'm starting to just finish up all of it. But like a coaching call with me, like how can you take this email and make it yours, especially with all the AI out there? You want to make it different.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have a link to this offer in the show notes, so check that out. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Linda. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Linda, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.